My next guest went from experiencing an unthinkable tragedy to accomplishing something quite remarkable. She is the author of Nurturing Healing Love, A Mother's Journey of Hope and Forgiveness. And she's also the creator of the Choose Love movement, which offers free learning tools that have been downloaded by 2 million people in 100 countries and almost 4,000 schools. Her name is Scarlett Lewis. Scarlett, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
And thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I got to tell you, I was looking up your story. I think your story is incredible. And I think that what you've accomplished is amazing. I think it's very inspiring. And I have a daughter who's turning 6 years old this year. And so this story really hit home for me. And so I was really looking forward to talking to you today and telling your story here. So I want to start from the beginning. You were a single mother of 2 boys. JT the oldest, Jesse the youngest. And as if you weren't busy enough, raising 2 boys, you're university educated, you worked full time. So I can imagine how busy you probably were. Tell me about your home life raising these 2 young boys.
So we live on a little farm in the middle of Sandy Hook. And so we have lots of aminals, we'll always call them. That's what Jesse called them. And so both boys, I was a single mom. So they originally went to daycare. In fact, I always worked long hours. So they went to one daycare in the morning and were bused to another daycare in the afternoon so I could pick them up later. And, we had really full lives. I never thought I got enough time with them because I did work long hours. I always had long commutes. So the weekends were ours, and I would have all these plans with them, and we'd do all sorts of fun things. It was all about having fun and being together. And I really focused on being present with them. And in fact, we didn't have a TV. So I didn't want to lose out to a TV. When I came home and say, turn off the TV and have them go, be disappointed. So we just didn't have one. And so we spent a lot of time playing games, playing cards, reading. We read every night. And for Christmas, they'd get big boxes of books. So we had a really good time. Weekends were just for us. And I'd schedule all these fun things to do. So we had a really good time.
That's awesome. I have 2 kids and they're all into YouTube now, and I try to limit how much screen time they get. And I cannot imagine just like cutting the cord on them and the kind of feedback I'd get if I did that. So that's incredible you were able to do that.
Well, this is like a little bit before screens, came
tablets
totally
and stuff.
On.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, let's talk about December 14, 2012. This was a day that not only did your life change forever, but so did the lives of a lot of people. That morning started off normally for you. Jesse's father came to pick him up from school. And from what I understand, Jesse did something before he left that caused you to grab your phone to take a picture. Can you talk about what happened that morning when he was getting ready to go off to school?
Yeah, so I was walking him outside and I turned around to give him a hug goodbye. And I noticed that he had written with his little fingernail in the frost on my car, "I love you." And he'd drawn hearts in all my windows. And, I talked about being present and practicing really being present, not on screens, but looking in eyes and really communicating. And I really credit that practice for realizing that was one of life's moments. And so I said, wait here, don't go anywhere. I want to go in and I want to get my camera, which, a phone, which is now our cameras. And I want to take a picture of this. So I ran inside, brought my phone out, put him right next to his message, took a couple of pictures. In fact, I remember deleting one because they're kind of overexposed. And then I took a close up of the "I love you" and I gave him a kiss and sent him off. And that was the last time I saw him and the last picture ever taken of him.
Nice. And that's a great picture. That's a great picture to have,
I'm so glad that I have
that. Oh, for
that.
sure.
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, later that morning, you heard that there had been an incident at a school, Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut. And when you first heard, you weren't alarmed by it when you first heard this news. Talk about how that day unfolded, what you first heard, what your initial thoughts were, and what happened from there.
I was at work and I had a coworker that was at home, I guess, watching TV, and she messaged me and said, there's been a shooting in Sandy Hook. Well, that could be anything, right? And then somebody else came up and said, I think it was in a school. Well, there are a bunch of schools. And then somebody said, doesn't your son go to Sandy Hook Elementary School? I mean, bottom line is nothing can ever happen like that to you,
right?
Even if it's happening in your town, right? So I don't know why. I think maybe we heard that a teacher had been shot, and I just assumed that maybe it was a jealous boyfriend that came into the school. And so then we heard that all the parents had to go and reunite with their kids at the firehouse, which was at the end of a cul-de-sac where the school was. So, I mean, I had a 45-minute drive. So I'm having people call me and give me updates. And by the time I got to the school, I wasn't even really, I wasn't panicked, I was just driving and listening to information. But when I got near the school, I started to really feel anxious because I had to park what seemed like a half a mile away. All these cars lined up. There were helicopters. There were army men and first responders running all over the place, emergency vehicles. And so I literally ran from my car to the firehouse, and I saw, parents hugging their kids and leaving. And so I was walking up to any official looking person and saying, have you seen Jesse Lewis? I think he was with a group of kids that were at the house next door. So I ran over to the house next door and I knocked on the door, and this older man answered. And actually I realized later that was where the group of kids that Jesse had directed to ran to. And he said, oh yeah, I think he was here, but I think they went over to the daycare. Well, Jesse's daycare was on the other side of the school. So I'm talking with Neil and I'm like, you go to the daycare, I'll go into the firehouse. And, eventually I know they kept saying, go into this back room. If you don't have your kid, go into the back room and put their name down on a missing persons list. And I was like, so I just wanted to find Jesse and leave. I'm like, I'm not putting his name down on this list, mm-hmm. right? I'm just going to find him and leave. Eventually, of course, I did go into that room. By the time I had to write his name down, I remember it was just like a notebook paper, but I had to turn it over and put his name down at the end of this long list. And I mean, it's like incomprehensible, right? Yeah. There's a list of missing people, but it never even occurred to me that they were dead, And so by that time they had people from the school, educators that had come out. It was almost surreal, right? Because they were like, okay, eat pizza. They have pizza here. I have a piece of pizza. So I'm like, I'm not having a piece of pizza. I'm finding my child, So I went to a room and there were all these educators that I knew eating pizza. And I'm like, where's Jesse? And they were looking at each other, like this. And I was just like, it didn't even then I was like, why isn't anybody saying anything? Right? Mm-hmm. This is ridiculous. I just want my child. So during this time, actually, JT, who was 12 years old in 7th grade and in lockdown in his Spanish class, is texting me going, Mom, can I come wait with you? And I'm thinking, well, of course, right? Because when they actually since then, the first responders had said to me, well, we're we are sweeping and re-sweeping the school. We think there are kids hiding. We think that kids have maybe gone into the woods and they're hiding. And I'm like, I'm thinking in my mind, absolutely. Jesse's taken a small contingent. He's led a small contingent of kids into the woods. It's going to take him a while to find him. So I'm writing JT back, sure, come and wait with me, because when they find him, he's going to want his big brother there. I mean, we'll probably, I don't know, maybe go out to dinner with Nana and Papa, who also live in Newtown. So my mom was coming to the firehouse to wait with me. I mean, it was just kind of, and during this whole time, just chaos, right? Parents demanding answers, total chaos. And so, you know, my mom and my stepfather and JT came, we're waiting. And it was a terrible day, obviously.
Yeah.
We, you know, at one point I realized that JT was watching, you know, every single move that I made. The police would come up and say, well, did you have a recent picture of Jesse? And I was like, yeah, that's not a great sign. Did he have any identifying marks on his body? I'm like, ugh. And then I realized JT's watching every move I make. I'm modeling for him what difficulty, roadblocks, challenges, I don't know, pain and suffering and trauma, loss look like. It helped me be strong in that moment. It helped me rise to the occasion, knowing that he was watching my every move during that time. And eventually some guy came up and said, there's no easy way to say this, your son's dead. And I'd already come to that conclusion in my mind. I think by then it was a long time after we arrived at the firehouse. And police came up to him. The police came up to me and said, what did that guy say to you? And I said, he told me my son's dead. They said, oh, he shouldn't have said that. They grabbed him. And, you know, because people come when there's a tragedy and they try to, I don't know, help or take advantage. So it was a really tough day. Oh, those are some of my memories.
Goes without saying, yeah.
Yeah, actually, to tell you how long I was there, I mean, I really didn't get emotional until my brother who lives in Darien drove up to be with us, but just to wait, you know. And then when I saw my brother and his wife, who had driven down from Boston, and we had just gotten the word that Jesse was dead. And then I was like, I don't know, I saw Coulter bend over double, and I thought, oh my God, like that's when it hit me that what happened. You know, I think it was just sinking in when I saw his reaction.
Right. Well, the shooter was a 20-year-old named Adam Lanza, and he shot and killed 26 people that day, including 20 children and 6 adult staff members. He also murdered his mother that morning at their home. And in Jesse's case, from what I understand, and you already alluded to this, Jesse was a hero that day because he saved several of his classmates. And what were you told? You kind of already talked about it. What were you told about what Jesse did that day, and how did they know that he did what he did?
Through eyewitness accounts, through the kids. But Jesse, when the shooter came, the shooter shot his way into the glass doors. I think he walked around the office a little bit. He had been to that school, and he had attended that elementary school. His mother had taught at that school, so he was familiar with the layout. And then he turned down the first grade hallway, and the principal and the counselor had been in a meeting in an office on the right-hand side with a parent, and they heard the shooting, so they came out, and he killed them in the hallway, which is why he passed by the first grade classroom, and then he turned into the second first grade classroom, which was my son's classroom, and he continued his shooting, probably more at adult level, and his gun ran out of bullets. So Jesse stood up to him, and he called for his friends to run during the short delay when he was either reloading or clearing a jam in his gun, and 9 kids were able to escape before he reloaded and killed the rest of the kids in the room. And we
Wow.
believe that Jesse stayed to stay by the side of his teacher, who was most likely already gone.
Wow. It's amazing that he had the thought of mind to do that. Now, a few days after this happened, you went back to your house, and that's when you saw something that became the inspiration for what you would go on to do. Talk about what you saw. Talk about what happened.
Yeah. So at first, I thought I would never be able to go back to my little farmhouse, that I raised my two boys. Like it just, I was thinking about walking in the door and seeing the shoes, the coats, and the toothbrush by the sink. So I thought I'd never be able to go back. But then it came down to like, who's going to choose his clothes for the casket? And is it going to be his dad or me? And of course I wanted it to be me. So I remember coming back to the house a few days later with just surrounded, somebody had rented a van. And so that's where we went down to the middle of Sandy Hook. They had all of these memorials set up. And that's what brought us to the house, just with a whole bunch of family and friends. And so I walk in and I just walked. I had asked for everything to be removed of Jesse's. It's just, you make decisions and then you wonder why you made them, Then, I don't know, a week later, I was like, oh my God, what did you do with all that stuff? So anyway, I walk directly into Jesse's room. I go into his drawers. I pick out an outfit. And then I turn around and I'm walking directly out. And it's actually right around the corner from where I'm sitting, my kitchen. And I had spray painted a chalkboard on the side of our oven, and I saw a message. It was he had written sometime shortly before he died, "Nurturing, healing, love," and I just was stopped in my tracks because I knew in that moment that if Adam Lanza, the perpetrator, had been able to give and receive nurturing, healing love, the tragedy would never have happened. And so I was just stopped in my tracks. And I knew then and there that I don't know, I'd be spending the rest of my life spreading that message. I had no idea what it meant or anything else. But that was, that was such a huge message of comfort for us, for all of us, for me, for his brother. It was almost like he'd had a spiritual awareness of what was going to happen, and he left that message. Those words aren't something a 6-year-old normally says.
You're right.
They were phonetically spelled. People say, well, did you walk around saying nurturing, healing, love? And I kind of laugh. It's like, no, I didn't. I wish I had, but I didn't. It was just a life-changing. In fact, that moment just made me do a 180 in my entire life. I knew I just dedicated my life to those words and to spreading them, because I knew that that's where we needed to go in order to survive and thrive.
Right. I can't imagine my 6-year-old daughter writing that on a chalkboard. And so,
right.
So that's definitely...
I mean, they were phonetically spelled because he was in first grade and just learning to write, but there's no doubt what he was trying to write.
Yeah, yeah. And I understand that your son JT found a note from Jesse later on as well.
So it was the same day. So he had come home to get some things from his room because we were staying at my mom's house, who lives across town. And he found a little note that was folded up on his desk, and it said, "Have a lot of fun." And, in the same handwriting. But what an incredible message from a little brother to a big brother for the rest of his life.
For sure. Yeah. Now, around this time, a social worker came to your house, and apparently she said something to you that made you realize that's not going to be me. What she said to you, you realize that's not going to be me. Tell me about what she said to you that day.
Yeah, so I was at my mom's, and the state had assigned mental health workers, which is a really nice thing, to come to the houses, to go to the wake and the funeral with us as support, which was incredible. And this woman brought Dr. Laura Asher, who's just an amazing woman, brought an assistant, kind of like she brought someone with her who had also lost a son, thinking that that would be a way to connect with me. So I remember them walking in, and I remember the woman kneeling down. She had her hand on my knee, and she said, "I've lost a son as well." And, you know, when you're a newly bereaved parent who's lost a child, I just remember thinking, I just want to know how to survive. How do people survive this? I want to, so I remember just locking on her, like, oh my God, this was the first person that I had spoken to that had lost a child as well. And I looked at her and I said, "How did you do it? And you do it?" And she said, "This pain that you're feeling right now will be with you always. You'll always feel this pain." And it was I don't know. I can't say it was the wrong thing to say, because in that moment I was like, stop right there. Stop right there. Because if I feel this pain forever, I'll die. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like when I don't know, I just realized I'm going to have to figure this out myself, and I'm going to do it my way, because I'm not going to do it that way. I don't want to do it that way. I will die if I do it that way. So I'm going to do it my own way. And that was kind of a turning point for me, where I realized, all right, you're going to have to figure this out yourself, and you're going to have to create your own path. And that's it. And that was an empowering moment for me.
And so what happened from there that led to you creating the Choose Love movement? Because I understand that you did research on Adam Lanza, and you discovered that the shooting could have potentially been prevented, like we alluded to earlier, could have potentially been prevented had his issues been addressed. So what happened to cause you to create the Choose Love movement from there?
I didn't do a lot of research on Adam. I mean, I always felt like I was actually very careful with myself in my healing. And there was so much information. I always felt like I would receive information when I was ready to handle it. And I wanted to be very careful not to overload myself, because there were meetings for parents where the FBI would be going over all this detailed information, and it was a lot. So I went to Jesse's funeral, and I decided to get up and speak to the congregation. And I said, this whole tragedy started in Adam Lanza's head as a thought. And I pictured him as a little boy having an angry thought without the tools or nurturing environment to deal with that thought, right? Anger. And I knew instinctively that he must have been in a tremendous amount of pain. I knew that when I saw the Nurturing Healing Love message. And so, everybody had been saying, what can we do for you, for the situation? And I said that, I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to think about what you think about every day, and to choose one loving thought over an angry thought every day. I said, by doing that, it'll make you feel better, because loving thoughts feel good, and that's reflected in how we treat one another. Angry, hateful, resentful thoughts obviously feel bad, and that's reflected in our behavior. So it'll make you feel better. It'll positively impact those around you. And through the ripple effect, you will help make this a safer, more peaceful and loving world. So everybody went out to the four corners of the United States, and that started calling me, emailing me, texting me, saying that one, they had done that. They had honored Jesse in that way. And that one simple act had completely changed their lives in different situations. My father has a best friend that's a medical doctor in the Midwest, and he had emailed my dad, who'd forwarded the email to me, saying, that he had started thinking about what he thought about, and so many of his thoughts were angry, and he never realized that he had spent his life being angry, and he was choosing love, and he had a medical practice, and he was posting the signs all over. He was telling his staff to do it. He was telling his patients to do it. And I realized that that had hit struck a chord, and that I could further that message, honor Jesse in spreading his message. And that was my thought for the Choose Love movement, was to spread that simple message because it was so powerful. And then I was introduced by Dr. Laura Asher to Dr. Chris Cook, who was the director of the Compassion, Creativity, and Innovation Center at Western Connecticut State University, not too far from me, as well as the honors program. And I met with him. I told him about the message, and he said, well, there's something called social and emotional learning. I said, how do I get this message into schools? Because I know that's what I have to do. This is where I have to start. He said, well, there's something called social emotional learning. So I start researching about these what are called essential life skills, like how to have healthy relationships, how to manage your emotions, how to grow through difficulty, how to make responsible decisions, just to mention a few, how to self-regulate. All of these skills and tools are not innate within us. We have to learn them. And if we don't learn them at home, by the way, if you're a parent without them, you can't give what you don't have, and or in school, you get to be an adult and you don't have them. I realized I don't have a lot of these skills and tools. I mean, I have a college degree and I've done some cool jobs, but I wasn't socially and emotionally intelligent. And so I thought, my God, this would have prevented the Sandy Hook tragedy, and it could prevent and reduce so much of the suffering that we're experiencing in our society, including, by the way, substance abuse, bullying, a lot of mental illness, depression, suicide, and the list goes on. We could actually reduce and prevent this. I knew that the school shootings could be prevented some way. I mean, it just makes common sense. Come on. Hurt people, and the people that perpetrate this have been suffering, are isolated, neglected, abused, and that was the same with Adam. I had started giving talks, and I had someone that shadowed me for a couple of days for an award that I was given. And after the 2 days of visiting schools and everything, he actually said to me, I went to school with Adam.
Really?
And he said, I wasn't sure if I should tell you that or not, but I want you to know that I knew that he had special needs. And when I heard that he wasn't being given the support that he needed, I was disgusted. Those were his exact words. And I was giving a talk at a nearby college to education students. And one of them stood up in the middle of my presentation and said, I went to school with Adam. And he said, I watched him be bullied by everyone. And he said he would be crying and shaking in the cafeteria by himself. And the only one that would go in and help him would be the janitor. Really? And he said, that's why I'm here. And I'm becoming an educator because I want to be part of the solution. And so, I came upon this information, and it literally everything that I heard about him, even what got into the report eventually, has made it so that it's easier for me to feel anger for Adam than it is to feel anger at him, believe it or not.
And I understand that when he was a child, he wrote a story about a witch who opened fire at a school with a gun hidden in her broomstick. So he had, this going on for a long time.
When he was in 5th grade.
Right.
And he wrote that, and he turned it in, and no one did anything about that. Just little stories that you hear, like when he was in first grade and he came into his class with a backpack full of birthday invitations, gave every child an invitation to his birthday party, and then no one showed up.
Really?
Little things like that, the isolation. When he went into kindergarten, he was tested for special needs, and he was found to have 7 special needs. He was given help for 2 of them because they pertain to academics. And I believe that he couldn't touch paper. He had sensory issues, and he had a speech impediment. But the other 5 were just went by the wayside, not addressed. And so we need to do a better job, because when we don't, things like Sandy Hook can happen, and they can be prevented. In fact, I don't know of a situation that couldn't have been prevented.
Right. You ultimately also forgave Adam Lanza's mother because she unknowingly provided him access to weapons, and apparently she didn't follow medical advice either in terms of his care. How difficult was it for you not just to forgive Adam, but his mother as well?
It wasn't difficult for me at all to forgive either of them. When I looked at Adam's mom, I felt compassion for her. She was a single mom, like me, dealing with a child who had special needs, and she wasn't given the support that she needed. She felt like she was in it herself. And, there were things that weren't provided to her that should have been by state law. I mean, when she took him out of school, he should have had state mandated home checks. Nobody ever went to the home. So it was difficult. She didn't know what to do. She was doing the best that she could with the skills and tools she had. And yes, she made mistakes. Absolutely, she made mistakes, but she paid for them with 4 shots to the face that morning before he went to the school. She paid for her mistakes. Absolutely.
Out of the Choose Love movement, you created the Choose Love Enrichment Program. And this is a program that can be downloaded for free from your website. And it spans not just from infant age, but all the way to high school age. Tell me a little bit about that, about the Choose Love Enrichment Program and how it works and how educators are using it.
So I talked to you about my idea for the Choose Love movement, which was really focusing on thoughts, because that's what we have control over, our thoughts, and our thoughts impact our feelings, which then impact our behavior and our relationships. It's called the cognitive triangle. And so I had friends who knew educators, and I started talking about my idea, and the educators got on board. I wanted to incorporate social and emotional learning within this framework of this incredibly empowering concept that we could choose love, this thing that connects us all as human beings, the want and need to love and be loved and have belonging. It connects us all, regardless of any real or perceived difference. And this empowering concept that we can choose it when we have some skills and tools. And these educators were so excited. They volunteered to help me create a curriculum. And so these were friends of friends. And then we added other people when I started speaking. So we had early childhood development specialists, we had PhDs, we had counselors, psychiatrists, all these people that weighed in on the creation of this incredible, one-of-a-kind curriculum. And then we created a website, and we started piloting it across the country with incredible results. And kids took to it, and we created it. I found out about, I actually had a meeting with the curriculum director for Sandy Hook Elementary School early on. And I said, there's this thing called social and emotional learning. I said, have you ever heard of it? because it could have prevented the tragedy. Because if Adam had been able to have meaningful connections, if he had had the skills and tools to have healthy relationships, if he had been able to manage his emotions and self-regulate, think about that one, if he had been able to grow through difficulty, this never would have happened. Have you ever heard of social and emotional learning? I was breathless, really. And she said, yeah, of course. She said, we spent a tremendous amount of money on a program. And she said, it's in all the elementary school classrooms. It's in a box. She said, but we ran out of money to train the teachers. So the program never got out of the box. And so this literally, I say it like branded a hole in my brain.
Yeah.
Like I went home and I thought, okay, I have to create a program that will get out of the box. I have to create a program that doesn't require teacher training, that's going to benefit the educators as much as it does the students. Because if you're not taught this, you don't necessarily have this. So therefore, educators need training on it. So why can't we develop a program where educators can learn right alongside the students? Why can't we develop something that then can extend into homes? And how about communities? In fact, how about get everyone on the same page? And in this kind of different way of thinking, by the way, it's choosing love. I know that you see signs probably around your neighborhood. They're around Newtown that say hate has no place here. And that is our negative bias that we all have woven into us. Our brains are wired so that negative events and memories attach to us like Velcro, and positive experiences bounce off. So we focus on the negative. So of course, you know what that message is intended, but it's a double negative and it focuses on hate. And so this is a completely different message and way of thinking. It's choosing, it's empowering, it's choosing love, it's giving everyone the ability to choose love in their life. And it's something that connects us all. And connection is what we all want and need. We literally were created to connect. We teach in schools that Charles Darwin said, the evolutionist, survival of the fittest, but he really didn't say that. He really concluded that it was survival of the most compassionate, because we need each other to survive. We have to be able to have connections and relationships. And that's what Choose Love teaches.
And you were also instrumental in changing legislation to incorporate social and emotional learning tools into schools. Tell me about that, because I read about the Jesse Lewis Empowering Educators Act that was introduced. So tell me about how you had a hand in that.
Yes. Well, I did. I reached out to every politician I could think of. And Senator Blumenthal had been in my living room 3 days after the tragedy. And he had said, anything that you ever need, here's my cell phone. And so I wanted to do a bill. And so I called him on his cell phone. He picked up and I said, remember, you were in my living room and you said if I needed anything? And he said, yes. And I said, well, here's what I need. I need a bill. And so we drafted one together, and he brought it to the U.S. Senate. And eventually the languaging in that bill became part of the Every Student Succeeds Act. And it's a step in the right direction. We still have a long way to go, but it's getting there.
Now, one thing I want to ask you about. So after the Columbine tragedy in 1999, and then with Sandy Hook in 2012, schools in the U.S. started implementing active shooter drills. And I've read about those. I'm in Canada, and fortunately in Canada, things are not at the level of the U.S. when it comes to this kind of thing. And so I've read about how traumatic those can be for the kids. I read about how they sometimes do actual simulations with men in masks bursting into school classrooms. One of the things I love about your program is that it seems like the active shooter drills, it's being more reactive than proactive. And whereas you are trying to be proactive. And so tell me about your thought on the active shooter drills and how your program can maybe be utilized as a great alternative to something like that.
So in the US, you're right. Well, if you think about how we think as human beings, it's focusing on the negative, it's reactive, it's defensive, right? So when you look at the pathway to violence, there's literally a chart, and it shows that violence starts with a grievance, and then it steps up to ideation and different levels, and then the attack. So if you think about how we think as human beings, we're, reactive and focusing on the negative. Where would you think on that scale we would focus? We would focus on the attack side, which we have. And I'm saying this without judgment, by the way. But we have implemented single point entries, door locks. We have active shooter drills. In fact, Sandy Hook Elementary School had an active shooter drill 2 weeks before the tragedy.
Really?
No one followed the active shooter protocol, by the way, because it was just chaos, obviously. Yeah. But really what the Choose Love movement focuses on is the school culture piece. Now, if you look at this chart, starting with grievance and attack, what we're finding now is that it's more important to focus on school culture, which is right here, because a loving, compassionate, kind school culture can precede and even prevent a grievance from ever happening that would lead to an attack. Or if a grievance does happen, and they do, it gives not only educators, but students the skills and tools they need to manage the grievance before it escalates into an attack. And so it is proactive and preventative instead of, as you said, being reactive. And at the very, very least, for the past 7.5 years, I have been advocating to, if you're going to do those external safety measures, you absolutely have to do internal safety measures as well, which is cultivating safety from the inside of every child out. If you think about it, there's research behind it, but it also makes common sense. Kids that are connected can have healthy relationships, can manage their emotions, have self-regulation, can make responsible decisions, can grow through difficulty in their lives. They're not going to want to harm themselves or others.
Now, I created Grappling with Grief as my outlet to help me cope when I lost my father and my sister to cancer. And it's something that I use to kind of help me channel that into something positive and to try to help other people at the same time. I want to read a quote from you. This is from theforgivenessproject.com. And this is what you wrote. Reaching out to others has saved me. People tell me that Jesse's message of love and compassion has helped them to change some pain in their life. To be able to pass on Jesse's legacy is very healing. So it sounds to me like the Choose Love movement, it's almost like it's your outlet, and you're not just helping yourself, but you're helping other people too.
It's so true. It is a huge source of healing for me. For me to be able to, I was traveling around almost full time, but now through Zoom, be able to share Jesse with other people, to be able to talk about him, and for his message and his programming to help heal and even save lives is just an incredible blessing for me and for others. And his example of courage has been instrumental in my life, but in other lives as well. So it has been a huge blessing. That nurturing, healing love on the chalkboard was for me, but it was for the world as well. And it's, it ultimately translates into a powerful and profound formula for choosing love. And that formula is at the basis of everything that we teach. And I practice this formula every single day. It helps me thoughtfully respond in any situation, circumstance, or interaction by choosing love. And it starts with Jesse's example of courage. for which, by the way, he's on the short list for the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Wow. I don't know if you know that, but it's the
highest. Your son, right? Your son was involved with that, JT.
Yeah, JT was very involved in, and it was really important to him that he received that acknowledgement. But I talk about Jesse's courage because we all have that capacity for courage. And we need courage, especially during COVID. We practice courage every day when we face our fear instead of resisting and avoiding it. And when we're kind to others, when they're not kind to us, there's so many different ways that we practice courage every day. And then nurturing, in Jesse's message, means loving kindness and gratitude. And gratitude can help us shift our thoughts. We all have between 50 and 70,000 thoughts a day, excuse me, as adults, the majority of which are negative and repetitive, because that's our negative bias. And so when we're in a more negative thinking pattern, angry, sad, depressed, and we want to shift out, you can think of something that you're grateful for, because you can only focus on one thought at a time. So we call it the Great Mind Shifter. And that actually strengthens you to consider forgiveness. Forgiveness has been a huge part of my healing. My decision to forgive Adam and his mom has been huge in my healing. And when you look at the research behind the decades of research behind the benefits of forgiveness for the forgiver, you realize in some situations, including my own, it's the only way to take your personal power back. So we teach forgiveness, which is, by the way, kids' favorite character value, because they think it's a superpower, because they say it feels so good to let it go. Could you imagine a society that understands forgiveness and practices it on a daily basis? Wow. And then we move into, and that's healing. Healing literally means forgiveness. And then love is compassion in action, which is the identifying of an issue. It's stepping outside yourself and identifying an issue. It's the empathetic component. Empathy is necessary for relationships. And also the action component. Then actively doing something to help ease another's pain. And that's where science tells us all the nurturing, healing love that we give out, we get back. There's science behind the benefits of all of this. So when you have the courage to be grateful and focus on what you have, even when things in life aren't going your way, when you have the courage to forgive, even if the person who hurt you isn't sorry, doesn't care, or doesn't know, or, by the way, forgive yourself. We all make mistakes. And the courage to step outside of your own pain and even suffering to help someone else. You've chosen love, and you have literally made the world a safer, more peaceful and loving place.
I look at your list of accomplishments now, and aside from creating the program and aside from helping to create legislation, you received the Common Ground Award in 2014. You received the International Forgiveness Award. You even got an honorary doctorate from Quinnipiac University in 2018. In 2020, you got the Unsung Hero Award. How do you think Jesse would feel knowing that he inspired all of this by those 3 words on that chalkboard that day?
I think that he would, I know that he is, I will say, cheering me on from above. And I also believe, and I always say, I feel like he's like right here whispering in my ear, Mom, you never could have done this without me. And I'm helping you every step of the way. And I'm literally bringing you resources and people when you need them. So you can't take all the credit. And I have this incredible team also that is all around the country. And they literally are the bedrock of what we do. And I couldn't do anything without them. But together, I feel like we all feel so honored. What a blessing to be able to focus our efforts on helping others and healing others. I mean, for my whole life, I realized that everything that I'd done was really fear-based before I started Choose Love. I realized, they were jobs, and I was kind of a little bit desperate to earn a living for my family, and afraid of losing my job, and like, I don't think if you asked me what my dream job was, I don't think that I'd had it. Let's just put it that way. I did what became available until Choose Love. And Choose Love and I wouldn't have realized it before the tragedy, but I realize it now, that if you can be in a position where you help other people, this is the meaning and purpose of my life. And how blessed am I to be able to have a mission that is so helpful to so many other people.
Now, as we're doing this in September 2020, Katherine Schwarzenegger Pratt, who is the daughter of Arnold, of course, and the wife of Chris Pratt, she just released a book called The Gift of Forgiveness, and she devoted an entire chapter of that book to your story. How did that ever come about?
Well, I had worked extensively with her uncle, Tim Shriver. Tim Shriver is a founder of CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, responsible for the majority of the research behind the power of social and emotional learning. And he's also the president of Special Olympics, but he and I have gone to Washington, D.C. Several times together, and are in touch. And so when he kind of recommended me to Katherine, and Katherine reached out. And so we've done a few things together, which is really wonderful. I love the concept of talking about forgiveness, because I don't think that, it's been my experience, actually, that the majority of us adults don't understand what forgiveness really is. I know I didn't. I was 44 years old when Jesse was murdered, and it's in my faith that you forgive so you're forgiven, but I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't practice it. I didn't talk about it, and I think, it's so funny when I wanted to put forgiveness because healing means forgiveness in the program. All the adults said, wow, I think that that's too lofty a topic for kids. But as I said before, that's kids' favorite character value, and they get it. But it's the adults that need a little help. They are the ones that are learning alongside the kids, and then incorporating it into their lives. And the stories that we hear from this are just incredible, because, there are situations where you're literally a captive in your own mind. And you're giving your personal power away to somebody who hurt you, by allowing them to control your thoughts, which then impact your feelings, which then impact your behavior. And forgiveness, in some instances, including my own, is literally taking your personal power back, cutting that cord that attaches you to pain. It's so powerful, so healing. And getting this message out there is, 7.5 years ago when I started this, I was focusing on keeping kids safe in schools. And I didn't realize that, well, pretty much I was doing it for now, where we are in the world right now. We need this now more than ever, to thoughtfully respond to what's happening in our world by choosing love. And, we're all out of our comfort zone, which means that we're in our growth zone, which means that we can create the world that we want to live in, which is pretty exciting. And I don't know about you, but I definitely want to live in a world where people thoughtfully respond by choosing love. And that's the world I want to help create. And we've got so many people around the world that, our programs being taught in every state. In fact, in some states, it's the most taught social emotional learning program, over 100 countries. So, this concept of teaching love connects us all. And that's why it can be done in different languages and different areas with different religions or non-religions. It doesn't matter, because it's all about what connects us all as human beings.
And not just in schools now. I understand that the program's available for the home. I understand that the military has been utilizing it. It's been being used in prisons even. So it's really just far-reaching at this point.
It's incredible. It's being used in foster care. It's being used in police departments, the Department of Health and Human Services, in libraries, in clubs, in schools. The list goes on. I mean, we never envisioned where people have taken this, and they've taken it as their own, and it's a beautiful thing.
Now, you've addressed this already, but I'm going to ask it just because anybody watching this, I really want to kind of highlight this. If anybody watches this who has experienced any kind of trauma at the hands of somebody else, maybe they feel like they've been wronged by somebody else, and forgiveness might be something that is just outside the realm of possibility for them. What's your message to these people based on your experience and what you've learned?
I honor everyone's healing journey. And I think everyone's healing journey is different. But I do think that, at some point, we have to take responsibility for where we are and where we're going and our future. And for me, the only way I could take my personal power back was through forgiveness, through literally cutting the attachment that I had with Adam Lanza, only in that I was giving him control through anger over my thoughts. And forgiveness was a key to freedom for me. And I just ask that everybody consider that, and not even to think, that, oh, I have to feel 100% about it, and I don't feel 100% yet. You can just make the commitment that you're open to it, and you can make the choice to do it. Close your eyes and cut that cord, and then you open your eyes and you're angry again, and that's okay, because forgiveness starts with a choice, and then it becomes a process, and it may be one that you have to do every day, but that's okay, because it's a way to take your personal power back. And when, you can be victimized. I was victimized, but I refused to live my life as a victim. I did not want to be another victim of Adam Lanza. And I did not want to model that for my surviving son, who was 12 years old. I knew that he would learn from my thoughtful response. And I wanted to model forgiveness, which is ultimately taking personal responsibility for my future. And so just consider that. And, we have a lot of resources online, and they're all free. And, in the beginning, I had people tell me, you can't offer things for free. You'll never be able to do it. It'll never work. People won't value them, for one thing, and you won't be able to keep going. Well, the majority of our donations are individuals who believe in this, and they want this to continue because it's creating a safer, more peaceful and loving world for all of us. And so we have been able to continue, and people do value it. They value love. They value what we're doing. Our mission is really pure. We just want to make the world safer, and that's important for all of us, physically and psychologically.
Having already accomplished so much with Choose Love Movement, sorry, where do you go from here? What's your goal from here? What's your vision for this thing in the future?
That's a very great question. So we've started an ambassador program, and we have ambassadors. I think we have about 50 ambassadors now. They're volunteers, and they have made a commitment to help spread this message within their areas. We don't have one in Canada, by the way, yet. Although we have worked in Canada and we are downloaded in Canada. But we're going to expand our ambassador program. so that we can get the message out to even more schools. And these ambassadors also support the schools, homes, and communities that are choosing love. I have opened a benefit corporation. It's a brand new type of corporation that is rooted in benefiting society, basically. And I have partners in that corporation. We've had so many businesses ask for Choose Love. And so I want to expand that B Corp to offer social and emotional learning to businesses. We will charge for that. And then a portion of those proceeds will flow back into the Jessie Lewis Choose Love movement to continue to be able to offer our programming for schools, homes, and communities at no cost. So that's really the future. I'm writing another book, which I hope will be out by Christmas. I have one book called Nurturing Healing Love, of course. That was about my first 6 months journey. This book is about the Choose Love movement and how that's been for the last 4.5 years.
Didn't you write a children's book as well at some point when you were younger?
You know, I had written a children's book about, and this was really inspired by 9/11. I had, my husband at the time was working in New York City, and the day before I had a foal born on my farm. A foal is the baby horse. And so I had JT, who was also an infant. And I just remember watching these horrific images and then looking out the window and seeing this beautiful, nurturing kind of image of, you know, a mom and a child. And I thought, you know, the books at the time that I was reading JT were kind of like, I don't know, they weren't teaching him anything. And I knew that his brain was like a sponge and it could be learning so much. And these books just weren't as meaty as I wanted them to be. They weren't teaching him anything that was significant, I thought. So I wrote a book that's based on the story of Rose, my horse, and her foal, and the most important lessons that a mother could teach her child. And, you know, I worked with my mom, I worked with my family on it, and it's illustrated with my photographs that I took on the farm. And, you know, it started getting attention after my personal tragedy, because the last lesson is that a mother and her child, or her foal, Rose and her foal, Rose was telling her son that we may not always live on the same farm. You know, we may be apart from each other, but even if we are apart, my love for you goes on forever. And love, you know, we ended it instead of the end, because it's never the end, right? Love never ends. And we know that it never ends. So people started buying it after 12/14, thinking that was prescient, that might have been a spiritual awareness on my part, that Jessie and I might not be living on the same farm.
Right. Interesting. Maybe you'll have to have a sequel in the works for that too at some point.
Yes. Well, I have not thought about that, but that's a great idea.
Awesome. Well, I got to tell you again, I love your story and what you've accomplished, and Choose Love movement, the things you're doing with it, I think are fantastic. And so I want to thank you for your time again. This has been Scarlett Lewis, creator of the Choose Love movement. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.